Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar that will focus on protecting students' information while embracing campus digitalization. For those of you who are attending Cerebro's webinar series for the first time today, you may have already heard about Cerebro because you are already using it in your school, or someone from Cerebro has already presented our platform in your institution. And there might be also some of you who are hearing Cerebro for the very first time today. And I hope you will be able to gain a deeper understanding of what we actually do and what we provide to schools right after this session. Just to give you a background about this webinar, Cerebro conducts a series of professional development programs throughout the year wherein we discuss topics on teaching strategies, classroom management, educational technology, and the like. We also conduct training activities and community events that feature the various innovations that our team at Cerebro has been working on, while relating these new innovations to the developments that are happening in the Philippine education system today. Again, our session today is entitled Protecting Students' Information while Embracing Campus Digitalization. But before we begin discussing concepts, I want to take a few moments to properly frame this session because the way you understand this topic will determine how seriously you apply it in your daily work. When people hear the word cybersecurity, because of course protecting students' information is all about cybersecurity, the immediate reaction is often distance. Parang ang layo ng konsepto. It sounds very technical. It sounds complex, masyadong komplikado. It sounds like something that belongs to IT professionals, no? People who manage systems, configure networks, or handle infrastructure. And because of that perception, many educators and school staff unconsciously detach themselves from the responsibility. They assume that as long as there is a system in place or as long as there is someone assigned to IT, maybe for some computer teacher lang, then cybersecurity is already being handled. But that assumption is exactly where the risk begins because the reality is very different. Cybersecurity is not something that exists only in systems. It exists in behavior. It exists in everyday actions. It exists in the small decisions that are made continuously throughout the day. That every time you log in into a system, every time you open a student record, every time you send a report, every time you download, upload, or share information, these are not just routine tasks, but these are points of interaction with sensitive data. And in each of these moments, something important happens. Data is either protected or it is exposed. Now, most of the time, we do not think of these actions in that way. We think of them as part of our workflow. We think of them as tasks that need to be completed efficiently. And that is completely understandable. Because in a school environment, diba, there is always pressure. There are deadlines, there are responsibilities, there are multiple things happening at the same time. Completing tasks and moving from one responsibility to another. Diba, doon na umiikot, no, sa tasks, sa deadlines. Doon umiikot ang buhay ng bawat isang staff or teacher or administrator sa isang school. But cybersecurity does not operate on speed. It does not operate on deadlines. It operates on awareness. And that is why this session is important. Because it is not just about teaching you what cybersecurity is, it is about helping you see where it exists in your daily work. And It is about helping you recognize the moments where risk is introduced, not through malicious intent, but through normal behavior. Hindi natin alam na nagiging vulnerable na pala tayo. And it is about helping you understand that protecting student information is not an isolated responsibility, but it is a shared responsibility. Because when we talk about student data, we are not just talking about files or records, we are talking about identities. We are talking about personal information that belongs to real individuals, students who trust the institution, parents who trust the school, families who assume that their information is being handled with care. And that trust is something that cannot be taken lightly. Because once that trust is compromised, it is very difficult to restore. So as we go through this session, I want you to keep one idea in mind. This is not about systems, not about responsibility, or well, it's about responsibility, but it's about a shared responsibility. And more specifically, your role in that shared responsibility. Because by the end of this session, the goal is not just for you to understand cybersecurity, but for you to begin seeing your everyday actions differently, to become more aware, more intentional, and more responsible in how you handle student information. Because in a digital environment, protection does not happen automatically. It happens through people. And that means it starts with you. Let's now take a step back and look at the broader context in which all of this is happening. Education today is no longer operating in the same way it did even just a few years ago. There has been a rapid and widespread shift towards digitalization. Processes that used to be manual have now been transformed into digital workflows. And instead of writing grades in physical gradebooks, teachers now encode these grades into systems. Instead of sorting or storing records in filing cabinets, schools now maintain digital databases. Instead of physically submitting documents to administrators, to division offices, files are now sent through email, uploaded to platforms, or shared through cloud-based systems. And for many institutions, systems like Cerebro have become part of daily operations. Now, this transformation has brought many benefits, and there is no question about that. Processes have become faster, information is easier to access, coordination between departments has improved, data can be retrieved and analyzed more efficiently, and overall, schools are able to operate in a more streamlined and organized manner. But alongside these advantages, something else has changed. And that is the nature of risk. Because when information becomes digital, it also becomes exposed. Not necessarily because systems are weak, but because access becomes easier. And let me explain this more clearly. In a physical environment, access to records is naturally limited. Kailangan mo pang pumunta doon sa lugar kung saan nakatago yung information, kung saang cabinet, saang folder. You need to know where documents are stored. You need to retrieve them manually. And that creates a kind of built-in protection. But in a digital environment, those limitations are removed. Access can happen remotely. Access can happen quickly. Access can happen at scale. And that changes everything. Because now, a single user account can open access to large amounts of information. A single action can affect multiple records. A single mistake can have a much wider impact. And what makes digital risk even more challenging is that it is often invisible. You do not see someone accessing a system remotely. Kahit may security guard ka pa sa school na nagbabantay 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, kahit may CCTV cameras yan. You do not hear when data is copied or transferred. You do not immediately know when information has been exposed. Everything happens remotely. Things happen online, which means that by the time a problem is discovered, the consequences may already be significant. So as schools continue to embrace digitalization, and that is the right direction naman, di ba? Because there's no turning back to physical uh, records. Talagang digitalization ang pupuntahan natin. There must also be an equal effort to strengthen awareness and protection. Because digitalization without security is not progress, it is vulnerability. And the more systems we adopt, the more important it becomes to ensure that those systems are used responsibly. Because the tools themselves are not the problem, but it is how they are used that determines whether they become assets or risks. And before we go further, I want to clearly define what this session is meant to accomplish. Because without a clear purpose, it becomes very easy to listen, agree, and then go back to the same habits afterwards. And that is not what we want. This session is not designed to just provide information, but to create change, specifically change in awareness, change in understanding, and change in behavior. So let me walk you through the three core objectives. The first objective is awareness. Many of the risks that exist in schools today are not caused by intentional actions. They are caused by lack of awareness. People simply do not realize that what they are doing carries risk. For example, sending a file quickly without checking the recipient, clicking a link because it looks familiar, using the same password across multiple systems for convenience kasi yun ang mas madaling tandaan. These actions feel normal. They feel harmless, but without awareness, they become repeated patterns. And repeated patterns create vulnerability. So, the first goal is to make those risks visible, to help you recognize where risk exists in your daily work. The second objective is clarity. There is often confusion about responsibility. When something goes wrong, people ask, is it the system? Is it IT? Is it the platform provider? Is it the user? And without clarity, responsibility becomes unclear. People assume that someone else is accountable. And when everyone assumes that someone else is accountable, no one takes full ownership. So today we will clarify roles and we will establish where responsibility lies so that there is no ambiguity moving forward. And the third objective is action. Because awareness and clarity are not enough, you can you can understand risk very well and still behave the same way. What matters is what you do differently after this session. What habits you change, what actions you take, what decisions you make more carefully. So throughout this session, I want you to continuously ask yourself, what does this mean for me? And what can I change starting today? Because real improvement happens when knowledge becomes action. Now that we have established the context and the purpose of this session, let us clearly define what we mean when we say cybersecurity. Because one of the biggest barriers to understanding this topic is the assumption that it is complicated, that it is something technical, that it is something that requires specialized knowledge. But in reality, cybersecurity is much simpler than most people think. Cybersecurity at its core is the practice of protecting data, protecting systems, and protecting the people from unauthorized access, misuse, or harm. And that is the definition. But what does that actually mean in your day-to-day work? It means making sure that student information is only accessed by the right people. It means ensuring that data is not accidentally shared with unintended recipients. It means preventing unauthorized individuals from gaining access to systems. And it means being mindful of how information is handled at every step. Now, I want to emphasize something important. Cybersecurity is not just about preventing attacks. It is also about preventing mistakes. Because in many real world situations, the greatest risk does not come from external threats. It comes from internal actions, simple, everyday actions that unintentionally expose data. Let me give you a clearer picture. When people think of cybersecurity threats, they often imagine a hacker trying to break into a system. But what they often do not consider is that many breaches do not involve breaking in at all. Sometimes access is given, not intentionally, but through actions like sharing login credentials, clicking on deceptive links, sending files to the wrong recipient. And in these situations, the system itself is not compromised, but the behavior is. And that is why cybersecurity must be understood as something that operates on multiple levels. There is the technical level, which includes systems, software, and infrastructure. And there is the human level, which includes behavior, habits, and decisions. Both are important, but in many cases, the human level is where the outcome is determined. Because systems can only do so much. They can restrict access, they can monitor activity, they can provide warnings, but they cannot fully control what a user chooses to do. And that is where awareness becomes critical. Because awareness influences behavior. And behavior determines whether protection is maintained or compromised. So, when you think about cybersecurity moving forward, I want you to simplify it. Do not think of it as something complex or distant. Think of it as protection. Protection of information, protection of systems, and protection of the people behind the data. Because that is what it really is. Let's take a look at this video to see how people, not systems, usually become the weakest link when it comes to securing digital platforms.
You know, we've been hearing a lot about cybersecurity lately, largely because of what happened to Sony. Companies and individuals are more concerned about the safety and privacy of their information than ever. President Obama has unveiled a number of new proposals this week to crack down on hackers, and he plans to address this in the State of the Union speech on Tuesday. And it's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. You know, the most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie 6 12
Nine.
95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma. 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is they learned a terrible lesson. Hi, I'm Jimmy Kimmel. Did you know there are things other than pornography on the internet? Watch them on the.
So now, you see, no, it's really people that's the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity. It's not the system. It's usually the people who are negligent, who are too trusting. And let me now reinforce what is perhaps the most important idea in this entire session. Cybersecurity is not the responsibility of IT alone. It is not something that can be assigned to one department and then set aside. It is not something that happens automatically just because a system is in place. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility, and that means it involves everyone. Now, I want to take a moment to unpack why this is so important because this is where many institutions unknowingly create their biggest vulnerability. There is a very common mindset that exists in many organizations, and that mindset is this: as long as we have an IT team or as long as we have computer teacher assigned to IT, we are secure. Or as long as the system is reliable, we are protected. And while it is true that having strong IT teams, having strong systems and capable personnel is important, it is not enough because security is not just about what the system does. It's also about what users do. So imagine a system that has been designed with strong security features. It has proper authentication, encrypted data. It has access controls. For example, yung na-access lang ng cashier is yung accounting system. Ang na-access lang ni registrar ay yung grading system. So good access controls. From a technical perspective, everything is secure. Now imagine, just like in the video we've just seen, that a user decides to share their password with someone else. Maybe for convenience. Maybe they're in a hurry. They want other people to access something that they really need. Maybe because they trust the person. And at that moment, the security of the system has already been compromised. Not because the system failed, but because a human decision bypassed it. Let me give you another example. Staff receives an email that appears to be legitimate. It has the correct logo. It uses professional language. It asks the user to verify their account. And without much thought, the user clicks the link and enters their credentials. Again, the system was not attacked. No one forced their entry into the system. Instead, access was granted voluntarily because the situation appeared trustworthy. And this is what makes cybersecurity so unique. It is not always about stopping someone from breaking in. It is about preventing situations where access is given unintentionally. Let's take a look at another video showing how easy people can involuntarily give access to their accounts just because something appears to be trustworthy.
Has this ever happened to you? You get a text message claiming your debit card may have been used for a fraudulent purchase. The text is urgent and instructs you to text or call a number before more fraudulent charges are posted to your account. You want to stop someone from stealing from you, so it seems like the smart thing to do, right? Wrong. Doing what seems like the right thing in this case is the wrong thing. Why? Because you have been targeted by cybercriminals through social engineering. Social engineering is a manipulation technique used by cybercriminals. It's where they try to trick you into revealing sensitive information like passwords or credit card data. They may urge you to click on a link or download an attachment or app which will spread malware. They may even try to use you to gain access to restricted systems at your workplace. As with most cybercrime, the purpose of social engineering is to steal information or money from individuals, or to sabotage businesses by disrupting or corruption data. Social engineering is based on human behavior and emotions, how you think and act. Let's look at the 3 traits of a social engineering attack that play on your emotions. Trait number 1: heightened emotions. You are more likely to make an irrational or risky choice when you're feeling emotional. For example, you may feel afraid or angry if you get a text claiming someone has used your debit card. You may feel excited or curious if you get an email or a pop-up in your browser claiming you've won something. Trait number 2: urgency. Most fraudulent texts and emails are worded to sound urgent. Your action is required immediately, or else you may lose out, or something disastrous could happen. Rushing you into a decision overrides your critical thinking ability, which can lead to the real disaster. Trait number 3: trust. If an email comes from what seems like a trusted source, double-check the URL of the site. Cybercriminals mimic branded websites and logos, but closer inspection usually reveals the website name is slightly different or the images are low resolution. Now that you know the traits of a social engineering attack, you can be on your guard when and where it happens. A social engineering attack can target you through your email, text message, or automated voice message. Attacks through websites include DNS spoofing, which redirects your browser to malicious sites, or scareware. Scareware uses false warnings that your computer has been infected in order to scare you into purchasing fraudulent cybersecurity software that contains malware. In extreme cases, an attack can be a physical breach of security at a company. Criminals may pose as employees or vendors, or may ask you to hold a door open to a restricted area while they carry something in. If you suspect you are being targeted with a social engineering attack, play it cool and take a moment to ask yourself these security questions. Are my emotions heightened? Did this come from a legitimate person? Or does the email address use characters that mimic others? Would my friend send this? Does the website have an irregular URL, low-resolution photos, or contain typos? Does the offer sound too good to be true? Does the attachment or link name seem odd or vague? Can this person prove their identity? Be proactive about your privacy and security on your desktop and mobile devices. Playing it cool when you get urgent messages, and never sharing your sensitive information is a good place to start. Now that you recognize social engineering, you can avoid it. Protect yourself from social engineering with Kaspersky's products.
Now, I want you to reflect on your own daily actions. How often do you log into systems without thinking about security? How often do you send files quickly without double checking? How often do you reuse passwords for convenience? Diba, these are really small actions, but in cybersecurity, small actions matter because they accumulate. And over time, they create patterns. And patterns that either strengthen security or weaken it. No, yun lang naman yun eh. Patterns can either strengthen or weaken your security. So when we say cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility, we are not just making a general statement. We are recognizing a reality that every user plays a role, that every action has an impact, and that protection is not something that happens automatically. It is something that is practiced every day in small ways and through consistent behavior. And when everyone in an organization understands this, something powerful happens. Security becomes stronger, not because the system changed, but because the people using it became more aware. Let us now go deeper into one of the most critical aspects of cybersecurity, and that is the human factor. Because if there is one thing that consistently explains why breaches happen, it is this: human behavior. Now, again, this is not about blaming individuals, it is about understanding how real world conditions influence decisions. People do not operate in perfect environments, they operate in busy environments. In schools, this is especially true. Teachers are managing classes, staff are handling administrative tasks, deadlines are constant, interruptions are frequent, and in that kind of environment, decisions are often made quickly, without full attention and without careful verification. Let me walk you through a familiar scenario. You are in the middle of a busy day. You are working on multiple tasks. You receive an email. It looks familiar. It seems urgent. You open it. You click a link and you move on. That entire sequence might take less than 10 seconds. But what you may not realize is that within those 10 seconds, a vulnerability may have been introduced. And this is how most incidents begin. Not through complex attacks, but through simple actions taken under normal conditions. Now, what makes the human factor particularly challenging is that these actions feel normal. They do not feel risky. They do not feel dangerous. They feel like part of getting things done. And that is why awareness is so important. Because awareness allows you to recognize when something requires more attention, when something needs to be verified, when something should be done quickly. Di ba? Done quickly or done with extreme caution? Kailangan ko ba munang mag-ingat bago ko to gawin? So, we need to be fully aware about these things. So, when we talk about improving cybersecurity, we are not just talking about upgrading systems. We are talking about improving habits because habits determine behavior and behavior determines outcomes. And that means something very important. It means that change is possible because habits can be changed, awareness can be increased. And once that happens, the overall security of an organization, in your case, a school, improves significantly. Not because of new technology, but because of better behavior. At this point in the discussion, it is important to pause and examine something that often operates quietly in the background, but has a very strong influence on behavior, and that is our misconceptions. Because the way people understand cybersecurity directly affects how they behave in relation to it. If cybersecurity is misunderstood, then even the best systems and policies can be undermined by incorrect assumptions. So let us take the time to identify and unpack some of the most common misconceptions that exist in schools and organizations. The first misconception is this: it won't happen to us. This belief is more common than many people realize. There is often an unspoken assumption that data breaches happen somewhere else, to large corporations, to banks, to government agencies, to organizations that handle massive amounts of financial data, but not to schools. Naisip natin kadalasan, dun lang yan sa mga may pera, sila lang yung mga ini-scam. Ang school, wala namang pera, bakit kami may scam? Bakit kami magkakaroon ng breach? No, we don't realize that this could happen to institutions that focus on education. And certainly not to our school, di ba? Yun ang iniisip natin. Now, this belief is not usually stated explicitly, but it influences behavior in subtle ways. When people believe that risk is unlikely, they become less cautious. Hindi sila maingat. They take shortcuts. They do not double check. They assume that nothing will go wrong, and that assumption creates vulnerability because risk does not depend on whether you believe it exists. Risk exists whether you recognize it or not, whether you like it or not. And in fact, smaller organizations like schools are often more vulnerable because they may not have the same level of structured training, formalized policies, or continuous reinforcement of security practices. If I will ask you now, ilan sa mga schools na nandito ngayon ang merong cybersecurity policy, iilan lang yung magtaas ng kamay. The second misconception is this: our system is secure, so we are safe. Now, having a secure system is important, but it is not the same as being secure because the system is only one part of the equation. The other part is how that system is used. A secure system can still be misused. A protected platform can still be accessed inappropriately. And strong infrastructure can still be undermined by weak behavior. So when people rely too heavily on the system itself, they may neglect their own role in maintaining security. And that creates a gap between system capability and user behavior. And it is in that gap where many incidents occur. The third misconception is this: cybersecurity is too technical for me. This is perhaps one of the most limiting beliefs because it creates distance. It makes people feel that cybersecurity is outside their role, outside their expertise, and therefore outside their responsibility. But the reality is different. Many of the most important cybersecurity practices are not technical at all. They are behavioral. They involve paying attention, verifying information, being cautious with actions, thinking before clicking or sending. These are not technical skills. These are professional habits. And every person in an organization is capable of developing them. So as we move forward, I want you to let go of these misconceptions because cybersecurity is not about where you work. It is not about how big your company is. It is not about how technical your role is. But it is about awareness. It is about behavior. And it is about responsibility. Now that we have clarified misconceptions, let us define a term that is central to this entire discussion. What is data breach? A data breach occurs when sensitive or confidential information is accessed, disclosed, or used without authorization. The keyword here is without authorization. Now, at first glance, this definition may seem straightforward. But what is important to understand is how broad it actually is. Because many people associate data breaches only with hacking. They imagine someone breaking into a system, bypassing security, and stealing data. And while that does happen, it is only one type of data breach. In reality, many breaches do not involve hacking at all. They happen through everyday actions. Kanina nga nakita natin, di ba? Social engineering. Let me give you some examples. A teacher sends a file containing student information to the wrong email address. A staff member uploads a document to a platform without realizing that the privacy settings are public. For example, Google Drive na accessible to all, to anyone with the link. An employee uses a personal device to store sensitive data. Tapos, kunyari, ginagamit ng teacher yung sarili niyang laptop to encode grades, pero yung laptop na yun nagagamit din ng ibang estudyante, nagagamit ng ibang user, so pwede nilang ma-access yung grades. In each of these cases, there is no malicious intent, no external attacker, no system failure, and yet a data breach has occurred because information has been exposed to individuals who are not authorized to access it. Now, I want you to think about how often situations like this can happen. In a typical school day, there are countless interactions with data. Files are created, reports are sent, information is shared. And in each of these interactions, there is potential for error. Not because people are careless, but because the volume of activity creates opportunities for mistakes. And that is what makes data breaches particularly challenging. They do not always happen because something was done wrong in a deliberate way. They happen because something was done quickly or without full attention. No? Nag-submit ka ng soft copy ng iyong class record sa coordinator mo. Sinubmit mo using an email or maybe flash drive, no, na USB. Tapos, kung saan mo naiwan yung USB, kung sino-sino na yung nag-copy, pinahiram mo sa estudyante kasi nag-copy ka ng file, ng picture or something. Diba? It happens quickly without our full attention. So understanding what a data breach is not just about knowing the definition. It is about recognizing where it can occur in your daily work, in your routine actions, in the small moments where decisions are made. Because once you recognize those moments, you can begin to manage them more carefully.
A cybersecurity report is revealing a new ransomware tactic that's impacting schools.
CBS News has learned of 40 attacks just this year on educational organizations. The group responsible is known as Vice Society. 15 of their attacks this year were in the United States, with K through 12 schools being the most frequent target. Cybersecurity firm Palo Alto Networks says the group not only holds data hostage for a fee, but it also threatens to leak it online. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Scanga joins us now. Nicole, it's always good to see you. Can you tell us what we know so far about the ransomware group Vice Society?
Yeah, the group first popped up in 2021, and since then, this sort of deliberate targeting of schools they've done, it's racked up the attention of federal law enforcement, educators, and cybersecurity researchers, particularly after they claim to be the ones behind a ransomware attack at Los Angeles Unified School District earlier this year. That's the second largest school district in the U.S. The group uses what's called a double extortion playbook. Lilia, you mentioned it before, and if it sounds malicious, it's because it is. You know, not only do cyber criminals hold stolen data hostage for this hefty fee, but they threaten to leak that information online if that ransom is not paid. Now, you mentioned researchers at Palo Alto Networks found the group targeted more than 40 schools and educational organizations this year alone, 15 of those in the U.S., 10 in the U.K. And Lilia, it's important our viewers know this is not an isolated problem. In fact, the nonprofit K-12 Security Information Exchange has tracked more than 1,200 cybersecurity incidents at public school districts in the U.S. since 2016.
Wow.
And public schools don't have the type of excess funds to really pay these ransoms. So, Nicole, I'm wondering why the group is targeting K through 12 schools.
Lana, it's a great question. Two big reasons behind the targeting of schools, particularly K through 12, as you mentioned. The first is access. Cybersecurity researchers tell me, unlike big banks or tech companies, you know, most schools simply don't have the money or the tools to defend against these kinds of attacks. So ransomware criminals, you know, they're facing way few barriers to entry. Beyond that, these attacks are noisy, right? They can lead to delayed exams, theft of personal information, and we're talking about students here, minors, even canceled school days. That all adds up to a lot of pressure on school administrators, pressure that cyber criminals hope will make them pay up. Now, I should point out both the federal government and researchers at Palo Alto Networks recommend that schools do not pay these ransoms, noting that when you negotiate with threat actors, well, there's really no guarantee here.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the advice, but is there anything the government can do to protect schools?
Yeah, Lilia, the U.S. government has previewed a plan to enhance cybersecurity protections in local communities. And we expect in the coming months, we're going to see a renewed focus on some vulnerable targets, not only K through 12 schools, but also hospitals, water treatment facilities. Now, in the meantime, there are some things that schools can do, including investing in and safeguarding against common ransomware variants. Teachers, of course, should always use secure platforms, especially for virtual learning. Now, when it comes to parents and students, there's always basic cyber hygiene. You know, get creative with your passwords, switch them up often, avoid clicking on links sent to your texts and emails, particularly if you don't recognize the sender. And as annoying as it might seem, always keep your software updated. If you or your child has a computer, a cell phone, or an iPad, you know, there are things you can do to safeguard yourself and your community against a cyber attack today.
All right, Nicole,
Good
thank
advice.
you.
Thank you.
So, nakita natin, no, talagang tina-target na ang schools. While, of course, that video is in the United States, later makikita nyo, hindi lang siya sa United States nangyayari. Let us now focus specifically on the type of data that schools handle. Bakit nga ba tina-target ang schools? Ano bang meron sa schools na data? No, because not all data carries the same level of risk. In schools, the information you manage is not just operational data. It is personal data, and in many cases, it is sensitive personal data. Let us take a moment to reflect on what that includes. So makikita natin, nandyan ang student names, date of birth, home address, contact numbers, parent information, academic records, behavioral reports, attendance records, and in some cases, no, clinic records, medical records, no? Yung record natin sa discipline office or sa guidance office, psychological information. Now, each of these pieces of information may seem ordinary when viewed individually. But when combined, they create a detailed profile of a student. A profile that represents not just academic performance, but personal identity. For some, pwedeng gamitin pang blackmail itong mga data na ito. It can be causes of identity theft, no? Magkilala bilang siya kasi nakuha na niya lahat ng information about that person. And that is why this type of data must be handled with care. Isipin natin, bata naman yung mga information naman ng mga bata ito. Pero yung mga bata na yan ay magiging adult din. Di ba? Usually, tinatarget ang information ng bata because sila yung hindi gaano protective about their own information. No? Just recently, we went to Singapore and I've heard a story that a senior high school was targeted in a cyber attack. Bakit senior high school? Kasi kinuha yung information ng mga estudyante dahil in 2 years time, yung mga estudyante na yon, while mukhang ngayon, mukhang hindi mo naman magagamit ang information ng mga batang yon, but in 2 years time, they will become adults. And when they become adults, kung ano yung information na nakuha dun sa database ng school, that's the same information that will be contained in government databases when they start getting their valid IDs. Diba? If it is exposed, the consequences are not just administrative. They are personal. Student privacy can be violated. Information can be misused. Trust between families and the school can be damaged, and in some cases, there may be legal implications. Now, I want you to think about how often you interact with this type of data. It is part of daily work, so frequent that it can become routine. And when something becomes routine, it is easy to stop thinking about it critically. It becomes automatic. And that is where risk increases. Because the more automatic an action becomes, the less attention it receives. And the less attention it receives, the more likely it is that something will be overlooked. So when we talk about protecting student data, we are not just talking about compliance. We are talking about responsibility to protect individuals, to maintain trust, and responsibility to ensure that the information entrusted to your institution is handled with care at every step. You might think, ngayon naman ang arte-arte na, dati naman nung mga bata kami, nung kami yung nag-aaral, wala kaming pake sa kung ano yung mga information na yan. Kahit na nakalabas pa yan, kahit naka-expose pa yan. But we should remember that during those times, hindi pa ganito ka-prevalent ang paggamit ng technology. Hindi pa ganoon kadali magkaroon ng data breach. Hindi pa tayo gumagamit ng mga social networking sites. Hindi pa tayo gumagamit ng mga online banking accounts, unlike sa panahon ngayon. Now, let us bring everything together and look at the critical question. Why are schools considered vulnerable targets when it comes to data security? From a cybersecurity perspective, schools have a unique combination of factors that increase risk. First, they handle large volumes of data. Isang school lang targetin mo, hundreds if not thousands of data agad yung makukuha mo. Every student represents a collection of information. And when you multiply that by hundreds or thousands of students, the amount of data becomes significant. Second, the data itself is valuable. Not necessarily in a financial sense, but in terms of identity. Personal data can be used in various ways if it is exposed. And that makes it attractive to those who seek to exploit it. Third, access to this data is distributed. Unlike some organizations where access is tightly controlled and limited to a few individuals, schools often have multiple users interacting with the same systems. May teachers, staff, administrators, each with different roles, different responsibilities, and different levels of awareness. So kahit na i-secure natin yung account ng principal, may access si registrar. Kahit i-secure natin yung account ng registrar, may access si teacher. Di ba? And fourth, cybersecurity awareness is not always deeply embedded in the culture of the institution. Not because it is ignored, but because historically, the focus of schools has been on education, on teaching. Yun ang focus ng schools eh. On teaching, not on teaching, on operations. And data protection has not always been the center of that focus. But in a digital environment, that must change. Because education now relies on systems. And systems rely on data. And data requires protection. So when you combine all of these factors, high volume of data, high sensitivity of data, multiple access points, and varying levels of awareness, you create an environment where vulnerability exists. Now, vulnerability does not mean inevitability. It doesn't mean that breaches will happen. But it does mean that the risk is present. And that risk must be actively managed. How do you mitigate risks? How do you manage risks? Through awareness, through behavior, through shared responsibility. Because ultimately, the strength of an organization's security is not determined by its systems alone. It is determined by how well its people understand and manage the risks around them. No, I want to show you this video to tell you that this is not just happening in other countries, katulad kanina. But schools in the Philippines are already being targeted. And according to the news report, the hackers are using the information found in school databases to create fake accounts in social networking sites. Maybe to scam people, no? Pwedeng pang scam. Or to create believable accounts for online trolls.
Sa bisa ng search warrant, pinasok ng NBI Cybercrime Division ang isang bahay sa Novaliches, Quezon City. Doon kasi natunton ang IP address ng account na ginagamit ng hacker umano na si John Raven Aquino. Nakumpirma ito nang buksan niya ang kanyang computer. Inamin niyang siya ang nag-hack sa website ng San Beda University nitong Hunyo kung saan may nilagay pang pagbabanta.
Aminado po ako sa pagkakamali ko po. Opo, yes po. Gusto ko pumingi ng tawad po sa mga naapektuhan. Para sa San Beda po, sana mapatawad siyo po.
Hindi taga San Beda ang 21 anyos na si Aquino. Pinakiusapan lang daw siya ng isang kaibigan na i-hack ang website. Hindi niya inaming kinopya niya ang database pero napasok daw niya ang enrollment system.
Wala naman po kaming ginalaw na pera, sir, or tinira lang po namin system po. Nakahanap po kami ng flow doon, tapos yun po yung ginamit namin para makapasok sa magkaroon ng admin privilege po.
Nasa 5 website ng mga eskwelahan ang nahack umano ni Aquino. Paniwala ng NBI, kinopya niya ang mga database para makagawa ng mga peking accounts sa social media na magagamit din sa panluloko.
Target ang account information, passwords, and other credentials ng mga estudyante. Usually, iisa lang ginagamit ng mga account holders, password nila ay ginagamit din password sa Facebook.
Abiso ng NBI sa mga eskwelahan, i-report agad sa kanila kung may napapansin silang kahina-hinala sa kanilang website. Handa rin daw silang tumulong sa mga gustong magpakonsulta sa seguridad ng kanilang website.
They should beef up their cybersecurity systems, Nick, to protect their database. Usually, meron tayong tinatawag na penetration testing or yung integrity testing ng mga systems nila. So pag may mga naglapit sa kanilang ganitong services or service providers, they should report it to us.
Kulong si Aquino sa paglabag sa Cybercrime Prevention Law at Access Devices Regulation Act. Sinikap makuha ng news team ang panig ng San Beda University pero wala pa silang binibigay na pahayag. Nico Bawa, ABS-CBN News.
Now that we understand why schools are generally vulnerable, let us go deeper into the specific types of vulnerabilities that exist within the structure of most educational institutions. Because risk does not exist in a vacuum. It exists within systems, processes, and environments. And in schools, there are certain structural characteristics that naturally increase exposure. The first structural vulnerability is the number of users, diba? In many organizations, access to sensitive data is tightly controlled. Only a small number of individuals have access to critical systems. But in schools, the situation is very different. There are teachers accessing student records. Kung yung isang school malaki, may 100 teachers, may 100 na user accounts na nakaka-access ng thousands of student information. There are registrars managing enrollment data. There are administrators reviewing reports. There are staff members handling documentation, which means that access is distributed across multiple individuals. And while this distribution is necessary for operations, it also increases risk because every additional user represents another point of entry, another point where something can go wrong, another point where behavior matters. Now, this does not mean that access should be restricted to the point where work becomes inefficient, no? But it does mean that access must be managed carefully. Because the more people who have access, the more important it becomes that each of those individuals understands their responsibility. Usong-uso pa naman sa mga schools, so si principal, hindi siya yung nag-access doon sa school management system. Si principal, binibigay niya yung username and password niya doon sa secretary or sa LMS coordinator or sa ibang teachers, no, just to perform their tasks on their behalf. The second is structural vulnerability is shared devices, no? Yung paggamit ng shared devices. In many schools, computers are not assigned to a single individual. They are shared. For example, ang pinapagamit na devices, yung nasa computer laboratory o yung nasa office, isang computer lang, lahat ng user, yun ang computer na ginagamit. They are shared, used by multiple users, multiple staff members, multiple teachers, used at different times. No, sa faculty room, may ilang computer, yun ang ginagamit ng lahat. Now, shared devices create convenience, mas matipid sa school. They allow resources to be maximized. But they also introduce risk. Because when multiple users access the same device, it becomes more difficult to control what happens on that device. For example, a user may forget to log out. Another user may access the system without proper authorization. Data may be stored locally without proper security. And over time, these small actions create exposure. The third structural vulnerability is informal workflows. In many schools, processes are designed for inefficiency or for efficiency. Files are shared quickly. Information is passed through email or messaging platforms, diba? To reduce inefficiency, we use technology. Documents are stored in various locations. And while these practices may be convenient, they are not always secure. Because when workflows are informal, control is reduced. And when control is reduced, the likelihood of mistakes increases. Sometimes, di ba, we send class records or grading sheets to class advisors using Facebook Messenger. E paano pag na-hack yung messenger mo? O di pati yung grades ng estudyante na-access na ng hacker. So, what we see here is that structural vulnerabilities are not necessarily flaws. They are characteristics of how schools operate. No? Sanayan na natin. But those characteristics must be managed with awareness because structure influences behavior and behavior influences outcomes. And beyond structure, there is another layer that significantly influences cybersecurity, and that is culture. Because the way people think, the way they interact, and the assumptions they make all shape how they handle data. In many schools, there is a strong culture of trust. Masyado tayong nagtitiwala. People know each other. They work closely together. They collaborate frequently. And that is a positive thing. It creates a supportive environment. It fosters teamwork. But when it comes to cybersecurity, that same culture can create unintended risks because trust can sometimes replace verification. For example, a teacher may share information because they trust the recipient. A staff member may grant access because they believe the request is legitimate. An administrator may bypass certain steps because they assume there is no risk. Now, these actions are not wrong in intention. They are based on trust. But in a digital environment, trust must be balanced with verification. Because systems do not operate on relationships. They operate on access and control. Another cultural factor is the emphasis on speed and efficiency. In a school environment, there is always pressure to get things done quickly. Deadlines must be met. Reports must be submitted. Tasks must be completed. And in that environment, people often prioritize speed over caution. They send information quickly. They respond immediately. They move from one task to another without pause. And while this improves productivity, it can reduce attention. And when attention is reduced, mistakes become more likely. The third cultural factor is the normalization of risky behavior. Over time, certain actions become routine. People reuse passwords, people share files informally, people click links without verifying. And because nothing goes wrong immediately, these actions feel safe. They become habits. And once they become habits, they are repeated. So cultural vulnerabilities are not about systems. They are about mindset. They're about how people approach their work. And that is why addressing cybersecurity requires not just policies, but awareness. Because culture shapes behavior, and behavior determines security. Let us focus on a concept that is often uncomfortable to discuss, but absolutely necessary to understand, and that is negligence. I want to clarify that what we mean by this, negligence or carelessness does not mean that people do not care. It does not mean that individuals are irresponsible. What it means is that in the course of daily work, people sometimes act without full attention. They take shortcuts. They prioritize speed. They assume that everything will be fine. And in those moments, risk is introduced. In a school environment, there are constant demands, diba? Multiple responsibilities, limited time. And under those conditions, efficiency becomes a priority. They try to reduce effort where possible. They rely on familiarity. And these are natural responses. But in cybersecurity, these responses can create vulnerabilities. And because security requires attention, it requires verification. It requires pause. And when those elements are missing, mistakes happen. Now, what makes negligence particularly risky is that it often goes unnoticed. Nothing happens immediately, no alarm is triggered, no visible consequence occurs. So the behavior is repeated. And over time, it becomes normalized. But the absence of immediate consequence does not mean the absence of risk. It simply means that the risk has not yet materialized. And when it does, the impact can be significant. So addressing negligence or carelessness is not about blaming individuals. It's about creating awareness. It's about helping people recognize where they may be acting too quickly, where they may be skipping steps, where they may be assuming instead of verifying. Because once those patterns are recognized, they can be changed. And small changes in behavior can have a large impact on overall security.
So, you agreed to get hacked?
You know, I am really safe on the internet. I don't open links that I shouldn't. I have a very, very low profile. I do not think I am a good target here.
This is Jeffrey Katzenberg, co-founder and former CEO of DreamWorks and billionaire investor.
What's happening today?
I'm hacking Jeffrey Katzenberg. It's going to be fun.
This is Rachel Toback, and she can hack just about anything. As an ethical hacker, she's hacked news reporters, Fortune 500 companies, and everything in between.
Jeffrey might think he's pretty safe. Most people do. But the truth is that nobody is unhackable. And it can be surprisingly easy to get in. Want to see how it's done? I'm in charge of the human hacking, and Evan is behind the technical elements of the exploit and hack. We're going to build our pretext using information from data breaches and data brokerage sites. The first step for an attacker is to figure out who you are going to pretend to be and how you're going to contact them. This hack, I think it makes sense to be Jeffrey's right-hand man, Anthony Saleh. Anthony recently had a Wall Street Journal article about him and Jeffrey's working relationship, and we can find more details about how to pretend to be in this hack from Jeffrey's work website.
So this specific attack works because Jeffrey's computer is out of date. A security researcher has found a vulnerability in Jeffrey's software, and now that's publicly known. The vendor has since fixed this problem, but since Jeffrey hasn't updated, the patches aren't protecting him yet.
Now it's time to send Jeffrey our message with the malicious link. So what we're gonna do is place a call to Jeffrey, and we're gonna spoof the phone number, make the caller ID look like it's calling from Anthony. We're also gonna use voice changing software and add in background noise, so it sounds like I'm in a really loud place and I can't really hear him because I can't do Anthony's voice, so I can only say a little bit.
So as I think we were talking about, I really think I'm sorry. Hey, Anthony, what's up? What? Check email? Oh, okay.
I think we got it.
Hey, Mindy, can I have you come in?
He clicked. Okay, we got it. Okay, so now our attack prompts Jeffrey to open a shared cloud folder, which we told him to expect in the phishing email. Once he clicks open, the rest of the attack will continue in the background, and we'll be able to steal data from any site he's currently logged.
Second here, guys. Sorry.
That's how we hacked a billionaire.
It was at this point that we thought it might be nice to tell Jeffrey exactly what had happened.
Oh boy. Rachel, Evan, you people are bad people.
Guess I was just a bit too confident.
It's okay if I come in?
Come on
I'm
in.
coming in.
Come on, explain
I already
this to
hacked
me.
you. It's worse
I'm
than you
not
realize.
No, it can't be any worse than I
It
think.
is.
Come on.
Let me show you.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear the good news here.
You probably want to know what all happened, what all went down.
Yeah, I'd say.
You remember that email from Anthony?
Yeah.
That was me.
How is it you if it's from Anthony?
I had a lookalike email address, so it looked like I was emailing from Anthony, but I was actually emailing as myself.
So how do you get a...
You can just purchase it. It's .co instead of .com. And then the phone number, I was spoofing that phone call. So
I know, but it was Anthony's voice.
I used a voice changer.
That's bananas.
Isn't that nuts? And so you probably want to see what I got from you.
I probably don't, but I think you're going to show it to me anyway, so...
Yes. The first thing that we were able to steal...
See, my driver's license.
Probably also recognize that I was able to steal your passport, COVID card, pictures of your grandkids. These pictures were in your cloud.
So any website that you're currently logged into, we could access. Because you were logged into your email on your machine, we were able to steal all your emails.
Because you clicked the malicious link and your computer was out of date. So you know how that little thing will come in on the side and it'll say, update your computer now? And you're like, no, thank you. I would rather do anything else. And enough of those weeks built up, then we had a known vulnerability with your computer out of date that we were able to leverage against you.
You are really malicious.
So we were also able to steal your contacts, which is scary because, you're a pretty connected individual. When you are hacked, there's a huge blast radius among you and all of the people that you have connections with. You remember when you got that phone call from Anthony, right? Well, unfortunately, when you click that link, we were able to gain access to your mic, and we didn't even indicate that that mic was on, and we were able to listen in on your call. So you want me to roll the footage back for you here?
No, I take your word for it.
All right. I'm going to play it anyway.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
That email
Remember that call?
Yeah.
You don't even really use the internet that much.
No. I have a super low profile, but it's amazing just how vulnerable we all are.
I know. It's scary stuff. Thanks for being a good sport.
Thank you for nothing. All right, you guys, get out of here.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Have a shitty trip home. Goodbye.
Let us now look into a specific scenario that is very common in schools. And that is sending information to the wrong recipient. Imagine, no? Teacher, they prepare a report. It contains student names, grades, and remarks. The teacher intends to send this report to the school head. They open their email, they type the recipient's name, they attach the file, then they click send. Everything happens quickly because this is a routine task, di ba? But later, the teacher realizes that the email was sent to the wrong person. Perhaps the wrong contact was selected. Perhaps there were similar names in the contact list. Perhaps it was simply a moment of oversight. Now, at that point, the file is already out. It has been delivered, and the information it contains is no longer under the control of the sender. Now, I want you to think about this carefully. There was no hacking, no system failure, no malicious intent, and yet a data breach has occurred because sensitive information has been disclosed to an unauthorized individual. This is how simple and how serious these situations can be. And what makes this scenario important is that it is preventable. A simple pause, quick verification of the recipient, a moment of attention before clicking send, these small actions could prevent the entire situation. So the lesson here is not just about avoiding mistakes. It is about recognizing that even routine actions carry risk. And that awareness must be present even in the most familiar tasks. Another scenario that is increasingly common, phishing. Now, imagine receiving an email that appears to come from a legitimate source. It uses familiar branding, contains official language. It may even reference something relevant to your work. And the message asks you to take action, perhaps to verify your account, update your password, or to access a file. No, katulad dito nakalagay dito. It seems like an email from Microsoft. Now, everything about the email seems normal. So you follow the instructions, you click the link, you enter your credentials, and within seconds, those credentials are captured. Bakit? When you see it's not at Microsoft.com pala. It's letter M na mukhang letter M lang, pero it's actually letter R at letter N na magkatabi, na mukhang letter M lang. At that moment, access to your account has been compromised. Naibigay mo ang username and password mo sa ibang website na hindi naman pala Microsoft. Now, what is important to understand here is that the system itself was not attacked. No one broke into it. Instead, access was obtained through deception, through manipulation of human behavior. And this is what makes phishing so effective. It does not rely on technical weakness. It relies on human trust. Now, I want you to reflect on how often you receive emails, how often you are asked to click links, how often you are prompted to take action quickly. And in those moments, how often do you pause and verify? Because that pause is critical. It is the difference between a secure action and a compromised one. So the lesson here is simple but powerful. Do not trust immediately. Verify first, because in a digital environment, appearances can be misleading. And awareness is your best defense. Now, another very common but often an underestimated source of risk, passwords. First glance, passwords may seem like a simple matter, something routine, something personal, something that does not require much thought. But in reality, passwords are one of the most critical elements of cybersecurity because they serve as the first line of defense. They determine who gets access and who does not. Now, let me ask you to reflect honestly on your own habits. How do you create your passwords? Do you use something easy to remember? You use the same password for all your accounts across multiple systems? Do you base your password on something familiar like your birthday or name? These are very common practices and they are understandable because people want convenience. Kung madali mo nakakalimutan ng password mo, sometimes you write it on a post-it note, dinidikit mo doon sa computer mo, sa faculty room, nakita ng lahat. Diba? Because we want something that we can remember easily. We want to avoid the inconvenience of forgetting passwords. But convenience, in this case, comes with risk. Because simple or predictable passwords are easier to guess, and reused passwords create a chain of vulnerability. If you use the same password across multiple systems, and one of those systems is compromised, then all the other systems that use that same password are also at risk. It is like using one key for multiple doors. If that key is copied, every door becomes accessible. Now let us connect this to real scenarios. Imagine that a teacher uses the same password for their email, for their school system, for their cloud storage like Google Drive or iCloud. Now imagine that their email account is compromised. No? At that point, the attacker may attempt to use the same credentials on all other systems. And if those credentials work, access is extended, all because of a single repeated password. Now, what makes this particularly dangerous is that it often goes unnoticed. There is no immediate sign, no visible indication that something is wrong, and by the time it is discovered, access may have already been used. So what is the lesson here? Passwords are not just personal tools. They are security controls, and they must be treated with the same level of care as any other protective measure. Strong passwords, unique passwords, and when possible, additional layers like verification. Because in many cases, the difference between secure access and unauthorized entry begins with something as simple as a password. Now that we have explored risks and scenarios, let us shift our focus toward solutions. Because awareness is only valuable if it leads to action. And in cybersecurity, action often comes in the form of habits, not complex systems, not advanced tools, but consistent everyday practices. Let us walk through some of these. First, the habit of verification. Before clicking a link, before opening an attachment, before responding to a request, take a moment to verify. Ask yourself, is this expected? Is this from a trusted source? Does this make sense? This habit alone can prevent many incidents. Second, the habit of double checking. Before sending any file that contains sensitive information, teka, check mo muna, confirm the recipient. Not just assume, not just rely on autofill, but consciously verify. Because once information is sent, it cannot be taken back. Third, the habit of secure login practices. Use strong passwords, avoid reusing it, log out of shared devices, do not save credentials on public or shared computers. These are small actions lang naman, but they significantly reduce exposure. Fourth, the habit of controlled storage. Be mindful of where data is stored. Avoid placing sensitive information in unsecured platforms. Ensure that access is limited to those who need it. And finally, the habit of awareness. Because all of these practices depend on one thing, attention. Being present in what you are doing. Not operating on autopilot, not rushing through tasks without thinking. Because cybersecurity is not about perfection. It is about consistency. And consistent habits create strong protection over time. Now let us address a very important point that often creates confusion. And that is the distinction between the role of the system and the school, especially for institutions using platforms like Cerebro. It is important to understand this clearly. Cerebro provides the infrastructure. We are the platform. We are the system where data is stored and processed. But the school remains the owner of the data. The school decides what information is collected, how it is entered, who has access, how it is used. This means that responsibility does not transfer to the system provider. It remains with the institution. School ang gumagamit ng system. School ang gumagamit ng information. Diba? Whatever you type, for example, on Microsoft Word, is the responsibility of the one who is typing it, not of Microsoft. Now, let me give you a simple analogy. Think of Cerebro as a building. We provide the structure, we provide the environment, we provide the building. We ensure the building is secure, but you decide on what is inside. You decide who is allowed to enter. You decide how things are managed within that space. So even if the building is secure, if access is not remotely controlled, there is still risk. And that is where clarity becomes important, because without this understanding, there can be misplaced expectations. Some may assume that the system alone is responsible for protection, but in reality, protection is shared. The system provides safeguards, the institution ensures proper use, and users practice responsible behavior. All three, Cerebro, the school, and the users, must work together because if one is weak, the entire structure is affected. Now, let me take a moment to share how Cerebro is doing its part in this shared responsibility. Because while schools retain ownership of their data, we recognize that we also play an important role in supporting data protection. First, we are registered with the National Privacy Commission. This means that we are aligned with data protection standards and regulations. It reflects our commitment to compliance and accountability. Second, we actively conduct cybersecurity awareness training for our clients. Like the session that we're conducting like now. Right now, di ba? This is a cybersecurity awareness training. They're part of our responsibility because we understand that systems alone are not enough. People must also be informed. People must understand risks. People must develop the habits necessary to protect data. And third, we invest in the continuous professional development of our team. Because cybersecurity is not static, threats evolve, risks change, and staying secure requires ongoing learning. So our team regularly updates their knowledge, practices, and approaches to ensure that we remain aligned with current standards. So we have required our staff to undergo trainings, seminars, no, on a quarterly basis. And they conduct quarterly professional sharing sessions, no, na para matrain din yung mga iba na hindi naman nakaka-attend. So we update ourselves with the best practices in the industry. So we always keep ourselves informed. Now it is important to emphasize this. Cerebro is not just a platform. We are a partner. We are a partner in digitalization and a partner in data protection. But partnership means shared responsibility. We provide the infrastructure, we provide guidance, we provide support, but ultimately, how the system is used determines the outcome. And that is why awareness at the school level remains essential. And as we come to the end of this session, I want to bring everything back to a single clear message. Digitalization is powerful. It allows schools to operate more efficiently. It improves access to information. It enhances the way education is delivered. But with that power comes responsibility. Because every system that stores data also carries risk. And every person who interacts with that system plays a role in managing that risk. So let us revisit what we have discussed. Cybersecurity is not a vague or distant concept. It is something that exists in your daily work. It is something that is shaped by your actions. Data breaches are not limited to large organizations. They happen in environments like schools, where valuable data is handled every day. Schools are vulnerable not because they are weak, but because they manage sensitive information across multiple users and systems. And one of the most common causes of data breaches is not hacking, but human behavior. Small actions, moments of inattention, decisions made without verification. But the good news is this: those risks are manageable because behavior can change. Awareness can improve, habits can be strengthened, and when that happens, security becomes stronger. Not because the system changed, but because people using it become more responsible. So as you leave this session, I want you to carry one simple question with you. What will I do differently starting today? Will you take an extra second to verify before clicking? Will you double check before sending information? Will you be more mindful of how you handle data? Because real protection does not come from knowing, it comes from doing. And in the end, this is not just about systems. This is not just about compliance. This is about students. This is about protecting their information, their identity, their privacy, their future. And that responsibility belongs to all of us. And that ends my presentation for today. If you would like to reach out to us to see how we can help provide a secure online learning environment for your school, feel free to visit our website at cerebro.ph or contact us through the contact information listed on the screen. Or if you're already a client of Cerebro, you may also reach out to our product specialist assigned to your area. We are very much willing to collaborate with you in maximizing the use of Cerebro's learning resources. So thank you very much and good morning.